What do you think is the most common mistake made today by single family or scattered site property managers? What's a mistake that seems persistent in the industry to you?
So this is going to sound like I'm preaching to the choir here, and I promise you they didn't ask me to say this, but one of the things this industry is going to focus on over the next, decade, five to 10 years, is the resident experience. I think that we are so hyper-focused on the owner and keeping them happy, and we do have to keep them happy, right? Because they can fire us at any time. But the resident experience is where companies are going to differentiate themselves in the future.
Hello, professional property managers. Andrew Smallwood here with the Triple Win Podcast. Thank you for pressing play and choosing to spend a piece of your life with us today. Very excited for this episode with our new format where we actually ask one question to 5 different industry professionals. So you get 5 answers to one question from 5 different industry professionals. People like Peter Lohmann, Maranda Hunnicutt, Pablo Gonzalez, Wolfgang Croskey, and more. You're going to hear their answers to the same question. This week's question is, what's the most common mistake being made today in property management? So again, you're going to hear that question answered 5 different times from 5 different people. We hope you enjoy it. And up first, we've got Wolfgang Croskey. What do you think is the most common mistake made today in single family or scattered site property management? What's a persistent thing that you see just continuing on in the industry?
Wow, that's a good one. I would say the thing that I see is people not understanding the law and just going off of what another property manager said and taking that as the law. And I've been guilty of that myself. I trust this person, go there. But then you find no, I don't think the law says that, because in our state, there's a lot of fear of the law and there's some big consequences. So, you're juggling that, but really knowing what is tenant landlord law in my area and having policies that are around that and being confident with that, not just what did this expert say or what did this attorney say or whatever, but really what is the law? Now, I'm not licensed to practice law, but I think as property managers, being very confident in what is the law, how do we operate within the law, and are we compliant with the law?
I think
there's a lot of unintentional violations that take place.
Yeah. And as a follow-up on that, sometimes the challenge that property managers face is well, I am looking at this and I have talked to my attorney about this and here's what the law says. But sometimes the law is written in a way that's not clear, right? And it's up to interpretation.
Right.
How do you manage those kind of decisions?
I think having confidence in your process, and just, this is our process. This is what we're doing. Every time that I've gotten burned, it's because I made an exception to process. It was a friend, it was a family member, or it was a client who's got X amount. Yeah, we'll make that tweak. And if I trace back every time we've had to correct something, it was because we made an exception to process. So if you are, hey, let me speak to my attorney because they're the ones that are going to have to defend me, or my insurance company, whatever, and that's their interpretation, and that's what I want to operate with, then your process needs to be aligned and you don't deviate. When you deviate, challenges are going to come your way.
Consistency.
Yeah.
Important. Great. Wolfgang, thanks so much.
Really I appreciate it. Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, that's Wolfgang's answer. Up next, Maranda Hunnicutt. What's something that you think is a common mistake or misstep that persists in the single family scattered site property management world?
I think a variation on policy, not having policy, not leading with policy, not being able to give clarity to your employees, which I've made that mistake again. Finally, I've learned it. But every time you make a decision, that's a policy. Every time. Are we going to accept late fees? Are we going to waive late fees? Are we going to allow someone to go month to month, or have an owner not respond to us and just live in limbo? Some things we have control over and some things we can't. But every time you make a decision, you're making a policy, and you need to write it down and you need to share it with other people and you need to not have it in your head.
Yeah. Can you give an example of like implications where you've seen variability in policy or decision making play out to have negative consequences for a property manager?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, when we take over tenants from other PMs, seeing some of the things in the leases, well, this person, unit A pays, they're due on the 1st, and unit B's due on the 15th, and unit C's due whenever. And it's like, how do you have any consistency? How do you know what your expectations are going to be? And you can't have different rules for different people. Like, hello, everybody needs to be treated the same. So, just seeing things like that has really been I love when we take over properties and I see other people's leases. And it's very eye-opening experience. Every time it's very eye-opening.
What's the most surprising thing you've seen in a lease that you've taken over inherited management of?
It's more what's not in there than what is in, like, to get a 1.5-page lease. And I'm like, there's no way I could take this to court. Like, it doesn't even say what the due date is.
Yes.
It just says the rent is X amount per month. But there's no late penalty. Like, how are you late?
What date is it late? How much is the late fee?
Nothing. Like, your rent's, $1,000 a month. Due on? Yeah. It's not in there. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, that is so basic. Right. But some people don't have it in their lease. I saw that like 3 weeks ago, and I was like, huh? I was so confused.
Well-defined policies, consistently applied policies, big key, and something that still persists out in the industry. Not everybody's doing. That's a great one.
Thanks.
Thanks, Miranda. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Okay, you heard from Miranda. Next is Matthew Whitaker. What do you think is the most common mistake made today by single family or scattered site property managers? What's a mistake that seems persistent in the industry to you?
So this is going to sound like I'm preaching to the choir here, and I promise you they didn't ask me to say this, but one of the things this industry is going to focus on over the next, decade, 5 to 10 years, is the resident experience. I think that we are so hyper-focused on the owner and keeping them happy, and we do have to keep them happy, right? Because they can fire us at any time. But the resident experience is where companies are going to differentiate themselves in the future. Today, just because of the shortage of, rental homes, we can almost be like not resident focused. But there's going to come a time where there's going to be a bill that has to get paid that, I don't know if it's 5 or 10 years from now, but all of us are going to have to compete on the resident experience. And I'll tell you that institutions are thinking about this a lot right now. They're thinking about how can we make the resident experience really great, because they also have a narrative that they're trying to project to the public. And frankly, they're going to make it better because they have to. And what are we going to do as third-party property managers to keep up with what they're doing, where they don't get all the good residents, and then we're able to get some of those good residents as well.
Yeah, attracting the best residents with a great experience and focusing on that. And it does seem in the industry the fiduciary responsibility to the owner, and that's really my primary client, has been just a dominant kind of undercurrent of the industry. But more and more, and I'd say second nature plays a role in this, but it's much broader than even second nature, thinking about what's happening with resident experience and the opportunities people can pursue. Okay, that was Matt Whitaker of Evernest. Next, we've got Pablo Gonzalez. What's something that you see, it feels like a mistake or a misstep or a big missed opportunity that single family or scattered site property managers, it just seems to persist, right, in the industry of professional property management?
If you make most of your revenue from tenant placement fees, you are not aligned with your investor.
Say more about that.
As an investor myself, the most painful time to be an investor is when I have a vacancy. So if your business lives off of tenant placement fees, no matter how you operate, you are somehow going to be incentivized to turn that client, to turn that resident over, right? Like if you're high-fiving when your client is in their worst moment, there's something inherently wrong. So, like building a property management company based around occupancy rates and like length of tenant stay, to me feels like the North Star.
So Alec, this seems like an interesting question around business model, and how you're aligning incentives. I mean, obviously, like I would say it's rare to encounter, at least the people listening to this podcast, that they're probably high-fiving turning over a tenant. But like, there's an interesting question of implicit kind of incentives, right? Can still be influential and drive behavior. So I'm trying to think of, what's your thought on kind of like the opposite of that when you talk about optimizing for retention? So if hey, I'm not monetizing, because obviously there's a lot of work replacing a tenant. It's not like property managers don't do work that isn't valuable.
For sure.
Place with you. So how would you think about a different business model?
Listen, I would put your effort into signing the longest leases you can to start, right? Like 2-3 year leases. I know it's hard, right? But if you're able to do that, then you can market yourself that way. So you're going to have more clients that want to do this, and you can deposition your competition. If you put your effort into training your team to see a renewal the same way that an account executive sees a renewal for a software company, and it's about building the relationship with your tenant, letting them know that, hey, if you leave, you might not like our $100 monthly increase fee, but like, this is what it's going to cost you to move, and this is what you're going to then rent anyway. So it's not really going to help you, and help them understand what's best for them, and start building that relationship ahead of time so that you are maximizing renewals and building a good thing. You're going to be able to market that, right? Like, I think the way that you win that way is that you have more clients that are happier, tell more of their friends, don't go out there and tell people not to do rental properties. We'll bring you other people that say, my property manager is doing X, Y, Z. All real estate investors talk, right? So like, if you can really corner the market on this idea that I win when you win, I think that's the ultimate advantage.
So on that note, with JWB, is it like a reduced tenant placement fee? Is there no tenant placement?
No, there's tenant placement fee. I think the tenant placement fee is like $200 to $400.
Yeah.
Right. But
it's less than what's common in market.
I don't know. I'm not a property manager, right? So that's the caveat for everybody listening. But they make their money off of selling you more properties. Right. Like they optimize for you buying a property with them, and that's where they make their money. So, they don't have to go as hard at tenant placement fees, right? So like, you said tenant placement fee. Tenant placement fee is standard. Their tenant placement fee is 1 month's rent.
Oh, okay.
Right. Yeah. Tenant placement fee, renewal fee is like $200 to $400, right? Or whatever.
Got it.
Right. But, they have really like beat the drum on this idea that like, man, to be in rental properties, you want to be in them a long time, and you got to maximize for experience, right? Just like the resident experience.
I see.
Yeah.
So it's not that a tenant placement fee isn't being charged. It's actually that, hey, here's our average tenancy, which is much longer.
4.5 years.
You're going to pay fewer of these over time.
Yes.
And that's where you win. Here's how we align to win, as opposed to having shorter tenancies. So this 1 month rent expense is going to keep coming up.
And the resident is happy. One could call it a triple win if you were to get so fancy with your wording. Yeah.
Okay. And I think one more practical question, because you talked about long-term leasing, which is an interesting concept. A question I've heard people ask about this is, okay, is there built-in rent increases? I mean, people have seen in the last few years a very volatile change in the market, where we've seen double-digit rent increase, like not your steady 3-4%, and then also things soften, very quickly. And so, how do you think about reconciling that kind of volatility with a long-term lease?
You hedge. Right? Whatever you think is going to happen, you give them a slightly better deal in order for long-term lease. Right? So there's still going to be a rent increase. Right? If you sign a 3-year lease, maybe there's no rent increase at year 1, but there's definitely like a standard rent increase year 2. But they know what's coming. It's not like, man, I don't know how many property managers have been a tenant, like have been a renter, how long ago that was, but man, it's stressful to get rent increases, right? Like, it's stressful to go year to year and be like with your wife, and it's like 3 months till your lease comes up. It's like, man, are these guys going to rack me over the coals this year? Do I need to start looking? Do I not need to start looking? Right? Like, taking away that part of it will allow them to like lock them in longer for 3 years, and set that up. And if it's a 2-year thing, it's just like, hey man, you're signing a 2-year, but I guarantee you, like right now the market is saying that, rent increase are call it 8%, and we're gonna just do a 7% because you're gonna be here for 2 years. You get to control your costs and whatever. And then when the contract, when that contract is over and it's renewal time, now you're talking about like, hey man, these are the comparables. Now you catch up to the market, and then also incentivize a long renewal based on like, this is what it's going to cost you to move. This is what you're going to get out there. It's going to be comparable. You might as well save that money and just pay us this renewal fee and lock it in again. And it's just not going to be as much, but you get to stay here and we get to not have to paint the walls again.
And obviously, if something's being spread out over a 2-year term, if there's a little more, if there is some volatility, you can make that potentially a little more digestible, and hopefully,
100%.
Not continue to get too far behind market.
I mean, yeah. Well, at the end of the day, when renewal time comes, it's the time that you can catch up to the market again, or decide how much you want to catch up to the market again.
Right.
When they leave, time to catch up to the market. Right. But man, I just see, what I understand is that real estate investors are too busy tripping over pennies to pick up dollars, right? Like they're too busy worrying about an extra $200 of cash flow a month, a year, to realize that, hey, if your tenant leaves, you're going to drop 5 Gs, right? And that is a whole lot of like $200 a month. Right. And, at the end of the day, you win by holding this thing for a long time, having the property increase, having your debt get paid down, saving on taxes, doing all these different things that allows you to then refinance and go buy 2 more properties or 1031 into another faster growing market. Like, the name of the game is like time in the game when it comes to real estate investing. So you want to make your experience as break even to profitable as possible, but like maximizing for cash flow is a great way to like shorten your time in the game.
Awesome. We'll end it there. Thanks, Pablo.
Sweet, buddy.
All right, that's Pablo's answer. And to bring us home, Peter Lohmann. What do you think is the most common mistake or misstep that just continues to occur in the scattered site single family property management industry?
Okay, so I see a lot of property management company owners try to solve process or policy problems with technology. We have some outstanding technology partners in our space. Almost all of them are in the vendor hall right across the way there. And those companies can take your business to the next level. We use many of them. But they are downstream of setting up great policies, which then drive your processes. Jordan Muela first turned me on to this. He says process is downstream of policy. So your policies are, I cannot overstate the importance of your policies at your management company. And it's hilarious to even talk about this, because when I talk about policies, you picture a dusty binder on a shelf, and it's like, well, subsection C says we really should, right? And but your policies, everything from how you handle a late fee to what are your criteria for a new property owner client, they are the beating heart of your business. They form and shape who your customers are, how you interact with them, what is permissible, what happens when someone doesn't follow the policy. Everything from your internal sort of corporate policies with your employees to your resident policies, to your vendors, to your property owner clients. So having an outstanding set of policies then lets you create amazing processes that make those policies come to life, enforce them, drive them, and take your customers, your vendors, your residents, your owners, your employees through a well-defined process. That process part can't happen without clearly written, well-defined, enforced policies. And now you can layer on technology and supercharge all of that. But if you try and do this in the reverse order, you are going to chase your tail, potentially to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars. So if I could just get a message to every property management company owner out there, I would say get yourself a great set of policies and stick to them. Whether you buy them or you modify them or you hack them together from somewhere, that's where it starts.
Okay, one quick follow-up. If, the way we would think, and I've talked to Jordan about this, of like, we think a lot about experience. Hey, that's kind of like an ultimate outcome. Jordan will talk a lot about the outcome, right? Outcome experience. Okay, behind like a 10x experience is a 10x process, right? Working behind that right, is a really great killer policy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to ask like the kind of natural next question, which would be, what informs developing great policy?
Company values and your local, state, and national rules, regs, and laws come together to form your policies. That's how I think about it. I might have got that from you. I don't remember. But so your company, your core values at your company are going to define your approach to how you want to interact with your residents, for example. So I want to give a specific example. If one of your core values is kindness, not one of my core values, by the way. If one of your core values is kindness, that's going to inform your late fee policy for residents. How could it not?
Mm-hmm.
Our late fee policy at my management company is not kind, unfortunately. That's not an area that we've chosen to extend a lot of grace. But if you are sort of a warm and fuzzy person at heart and you build your company around that and that's part of your core values, you should absolutely have a policy around late fees that matches your core value. That's going to feel authentic to you, to your team, and it's going to, your brand, which ends up being a reflection of your core values, your residents, it's all going to kind of click. It's going to make sense to an outside perspective. And from there, you can generate the process for how you handle late fees and everything downstream from that. So
I love that example too, because it, the value starts with the value, but then you've also got fair housing considerations. Yep. You want it to be compliant and right. The risk too.
Yeah.
So thanks for painting some color on that with a specific example. Thanks, Peter.
And that wraps up another episode of the Triple Win Property Management Podcast. Thank you for pressing play. We hope you've gained valuable insights and inspiration.
The Triple Win Property Management Podcast is proudly produced and distributed by Second Nature, where we believe in a triple win, building winning experiences for your residents, investors, and your teams with the only fully managed resident benefits package. Visit secondnature.com to learn more and talk to an RBP expert in your area.
If you have any questions, comments, or want to weigh in on the conversation, we'd love to hear from you. Email triplewin@secondnature.com. That's triplewin@secondnature.com.
Stay connected with us beyond the podcast. Visit our website at secondnature.com to stay updated with upcoming property management events and articles.
And don't forget, you can keep the conversation going in the Triple Win Property Management Facebook group. It's exclusively for property managers.
To receive even more valuable insights and updates, subscribe to our newsletter. You can find the link to that and much more in the show notes.
On behalf of the Triple Win community, this is Laura Mack, thanking you for tuning in.
And on behalf of Second Nature, this is Carol Housel. Check back soon for another exciting episode.
Until then, keep striving for that triple win.